The evening sky had turned a soft blue as the sun slowly disappeared behind the tall buildings. The streets were still busy, filled with cars, lights, and people rushing home. In the middle of this loud city lived a poor boy named Ethan. He was 13, thin, and always dressed in clothes that were older than he was. Even though he had very little, his heart was warm and kind. Most evenings he sold small items near the roadside to support himself. He never asked anyone for help and never complained about his life. That night, the air was colder than usual. Ethan hugged himself as he walked along the road, carrying the last of the items he had not sold. He hoped to find a place to rest before the cold got worse. As he walked, something caught his attention, a loud crash coming from a distance. Cars slowed down, some honked, and people whispered to one another. Ethan's feet moved faster, carrying him toward the sound. Not far from him, beside a sharp bend on the road, he saw a car that had crashed into a metal barrier. The front of the vehicle was badly damaged and smoke rose slowly into the air. The street was wide and cars kept passing, but no one stopped. Some drivers glanced at the car but continued their journey. Some pedestrians walked quicker, avoiding the scene. Ethan stood still for a moment, staring at the crashed car. A soft feeling of worry grew inside him, pushing him forward. He took a deep breath and ran toward the vehicle. His heart beat fast, not from fear but from the hope that the person inside was alive. When he reached the car, he looked through the window. Inside, he saw a man leaning against the seat, unconscious. His head rested on the side, and blood stained part of his forehead. He was dressed in a suit that looked expensive, and his watch shined even in the dim light. He looked like an important person, someone from a different life than Ethan's. Ethan tried to open the door, but it was stuck. He used all his small strength and pulled again. The door made a sharp noise and finally opened a little. Ethan squeezed himself inside, careful not to harm the man any further. The man's breathing was weak but steady. Ethan gently shook the man's shoulder. The man did not respond. His eyes stayed closed, and his body felt heavy. Ethan placed his hand on the man's chest to make sure he was still breathing. The soft movement under his palm gave him relief. There was still hope. With no phone, no family to call, and no strength to move the man alone, Ethan looked around for help. Cars continued to pass. People continued walking. No one wanted to get involved. But Ethan refused to leave the man alone. He ran to the side of the street and waved his arms widely. A few drivers ignored him. Some changed lanes. But Ethan did not give up. His voice rose as he shouted for help, filled with urgency and fear. A group of workers nearby finally heard him and hurried toward the scene. Together, they helped open the car door wider and carried the unconscious man out of the vehicle. He was placed gently on a patch of grass by the road. One of the workers called an ambulance immediately. Ethan stayed beside the injured man, holding his hand as if trying to keep him in this world. The man's face remained quiet and cold, but Ethan stayed beside him, refusing to leave. Minutes later, a distant siren echoed through the air. The lights from the ambulance flashed in the dark street, turning everything bright red and blue. The medical team checked the man quickly and placed him on a stretcher. Ethan followed closely, hoping the man would be safe. One of the paramedics looked at Ethan curiously, surprised that such a poor-looking boy had been the first person to help. Ethan stepped back as the ambulance doors closed. He watched the flashing lights disappear into the distance. The city grew quiet again. The people who had helped earlier returned to their activities. The road became busy once more. Ethan stood alone by the road, his clothes stained with dust and dirt from the accident. He felt cold again, but his heart felt strangely warm. He had saved a man's life without even knowing his name. He hoped one day the man would wake up safe and remember there was someone who cared enough to stop. Ethan turned and walked away slowly. The night continued around him, unaware that a small act of kindness had just changed 2 lives forever. The hospital room was quiet, filled only with the soft beeping of medical machines. The air smelled clean, and the white lights above glowed gently. On the bed lay the injured man, still unconscious. His head was wrapped with a bandage, and his arm was fixed with medical support. He looked peaceful, almost as if he were only sleeping. Hours passed before his fingers moved lightly. His breathing grew stronger. Finally, his eyes opened slowly. For a moment, everything looked blurry: walls, lights, ceiling. Then his vision cleared, and confusion filled his face. He looked at the room, trying to understand where he was and how he had gotten there. A nurse entered the room quietly, surprised to see him awake. She checked his vitals and spoke gently, explaining that he had been in an accident. The man listened silently, absorbing every word. She told him he had been unconscious for many hours and that he was lucky someone had found him quickly. The man looked down at his hands as he tried to recall what happened. Flashes of the accident returned slowly: the road, the sudden turn, the crash. But something else stood out. A small, blurry image. Someone leaning over him. A young voice calling for help. The nurse continued speaking. She told him a boy had found him and stayed with him until the ambulance came. The man lifted his eyes, surprised. A boy had saved him. Someone he didn't know, someone who could have walked away, someone who had stayed by his side. He tried to sit up, but pain shot through his body. The nurse helped him gently and reminded him to rest. He leaned against the pillows and felt a heavy emotion in his chest. His life had been saved by a stranger. After some time, a doctor arrived. He explained the injuries and the recovery process. The man listened carefully, nodding. But his mind kept returning to one thing: the boy. The doctor showed him the personal items found in his car: his phone, wallet, documents. The man opened his wallet and stared at a photo inside: his family, his luxurious home, his achievements. But none of it held his attention now. He wanted to know about the boy who had helped him. The nurse told him the boy had left after the ambulance arrived. He had not given a name, nor had he waited for recognition. He had disappeared into the night before anyone could talk to him. The man felt a soft ache in his heart. He asked the hospital staff to check nearby cameras, hoping to find footage of the accident and the boy who helped him. They retrieved the recordings from the city's roadside cameras. The man watched quietly as the footage played. He saw the moment of his crash. He saw the cars driving past. He saw people walking away. Then he saw the boy. A small figure running toward the crashed car with fear in his eyes and determination in his steps. He watched the boy fight with the stuck car door. He watched him wave for help. He watched him sit beside him until others arrived. The man felt stunned. This boy, dressed in old clothes and carrying almost nothing, had shown more courage than anyone else on that road. He had saved his life without expecting anything in return. The man finally spoke while watching the recording. His voice was emotional and soft. He said the boy had saved him. He said he needed to find him. He said he owed him something he could never measure. The hospital staff exchanged looks. They realized this man was not just any patient. His name was Alexander Reed, one of the wealthiest and most respected businessmen in the entire city. He owned companies, buildings, and businesses across the country. His face was known in many places, but the boy who saved him had no idea. Alexander leaned back, overwhelmed by the truth. A poor boy had saved a billionaire without knowing who he was. And the more he watched the footage, the more determined he became to find him. The road accident had changed his life. But the boy's kindness had changed his heart. Alexander left the hospital after his condition improved. He moved slowly but with determination. His driver met him at the entrance, and security surrounded him carefully. Yet Alexander's mind was not on them. His mind was on the boy. He had already asked his team to search the area where the accident happened. They spoke to street vendors, workers, and residents. They described the boy just as the cameras had shown him: thin, young, wearing old clothes. Many people recognized the description. They said the boy often sold things near the roadside. They said he never caused trouble. They said he always helped others, even though he had nothing. After hours of searching, one of Alexander's staff found him. Ethan was sitting on the sidewalk, arranging his small items for sale. He looked tired but calm, unaware that someone was searching for him. Alexander's car approached slowly. People moved aside as the luxury vehicle stopped near Ethan. The door opened, and Alexander stepped out carefully. His head was still bandaged, but his eyes were gentle. Ethan stood up quickly, unsure of what was happening. He stepped back, thinking he had done something wrong. But Alexander smiled softly and walked toward him. He stood in front of the boy, studying the small face he had seen only in the hospital footage. Ethan lowered his eyes shyly, unsure why such an important-looking man had come to him. Alexander placed a hand on his shoulder. His voice was steady but emotional. He told Ethan that he remembered everything the boy had done. He told him that he had seen the video of the accident. He told him that he was alive because Ethan had stopped to help him while everyone else walked away. Ethan's eyes widened. He had no idea the man he helped was someone important. He felt shy and unsure of how to respond. But Alexander continued speaking with a warmth that made Ethan feel safe. He said Ethan had a heart stronger than many wealthy people. He said bravery did not come from money but from a good soul. He said Ethan had saved not only his life, but something inside his heart that had been silent for too long. Alexander asked Ethan about his life. The boy spoke carefully, explaining that he lived alone and worked every day to survive. Alexander listened with quiet respect, touched deeply by the boy's strength. After a long pause, Alexander made a gentle offer. He told Ethan he wanted to help him. He told him he wanted to support his education, his health, his future. He told him he wanted Ethan to have a life better than the one he was living now. Ethan stared at him, shocked. Alexander's voice remained warm. He told Ethan that this was not a reward or charity. It was gratitude. It was respect. It was the beginning of a new chapter. Ethan slowly nodded, tears gathering in his eyes. For the first time in a long while, he felt hope. Real hope. Alexander placed a coat around his shoulders and guided him to the car. The people around watched in silence, touched by what they were seeing. Inside the car, Ethan looked out the window, watching the city move past. He felt different. Safe. Wanted. He looked at Alexander, who smiled gently at him. Their journey had just begun. That night, a billionaire regained his life. And a poor boy discovered a future he had never imagined. Their worlds had been far apart, but kindness brought them together. And the bond formed on that cold road would last forever.